awesome. How are you?
Good, good. I'm glad this worked because, you know, we're under snow here in Chicago. So cross our fingers that the internet keeps working and that my dog doesn't bark because now I'm at home.
Okay, no. Well, welcome. Hey, we're just getting started right now. So we're going to are hopping on. If you want to go ahead and everybody start typing in hi, where are you from? We'll let Jill know. I was saying Kathleen, so she's on here as well. But let her know where you're from. I'm going to go ahead and get us started. I like to get us rolling on time. My name is Shari Strong, and I am the VP of Sales and Community for Soar.com. And this is the DEC series, where we focus on top organizations, and they share best practices when it comes to development, engagement, and communication. And today we have a fabulous guest. As I said, she's from Chicago, and I'm going to let her introduce herself here in a minute. But basically, we're sharing best practices so that we believe at SOAR, our mission is to uplift humanity. And to do that, you have to come from a place of abundance. And when you come from a place of abundance, we often hear that in the coaching world, and you have to be able to think in a bigger way. What I find, though, is when it comes to organizations and best practices, it seems like there's this limiting belief that we don't want to share what we're doing. Like somehow somebody's going to steal something from us or something. And that's what we're trying to accomplish here with this new DEC series, is we want organizations to help each other share what's working, especially after coming off of 2020. I think we can reframe how we approach engaging employees, developing employees, and how we approach communications. I know in coaching after the last 10 years, the number one thing that CEOs, HR people, everybody I worked with would say that they needed help with, or was their number one thing, top 5, is communications. And if that's the top thing, why is it we can't crack the code on that? Well, I have my own ideas, but at SOAR, what we thought we would do is engage some of the top organizations in the country to share what they are doing. So that's the purpose of this. If you have an organization, or if you have a team that does really good in one or all 3 of those areas, please let me know. Reach out, connect, CONNECT at SOAR, SOAR.com, and I will get back to you. I would love to feature your organization. So with that, we have Miss Jill Schmidt, who is here from Chicago, just north of me. I'm in the St. Louis area. I'm just going to tell a few things, Jill, and then you can fill in all the blanks. Here's what I do know. So she has a PR firm, but here's some interesting facts about Jill. So she has worked on commercial baby food formulas and the messaging around hazardous things that are in baby food. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was a great campaign we worked on. It was kind of scary because we started working with some natural brands, which I can go into, like what our company does. But this was a natural baby food that found that so many baby foods people were feeding their kids had cyanide in it, like poison you're giving their kids. So we actually looked at it and we created what it would look like, what this poison looked like. And we got it on Good Morning America. We came on with a whole jar full of what you're feeding your children and how bad it is. So we've done some interesting things.
Oh my God, goosebumps. Oh my gosh. Well, that's very interesting. I think you also opened the first Legoland Discovery Center. Is that correct?
Wow, you've done your homework. Yes. So back in the day, I actually was lucky enough to launch the first Legoland Discovery Center in Schaumburg, Illinois, which is right outside Chicago. And it was an interesting task because they had come here from Europe because their headquarters were in Berlin, looking for a PR firm. And they looked at all these huge companies, brand names, and they came to me, who was a little bit of a medium-sized company, and said, what can you do for us? And we had so much fun and came up with all these great ideas. The next thing I knew, I found myself in Berlin studying at their Legoland University, and was lucky enough to really take them from start to finish of launching their first Legoland Discovery Center. It's in Schaumburg, Illinois, and just had a wonderful time doing it and coming up with some great PR campaigns. And then also, I know one of the things we're going to be talking about as we move into this, but the people I worked with on the campaign and the people who worked with me, and how we developed such a team-like, family-like atmosphere to really do the best possible job for our clients.
Oh, awesome. Well, this is good. See, these are all the things we need to know, right? It's easy just to read a bio. I find that often, people send me bios or what have you, but I think it's also fun just to have some interesting factoids. And one of those on the fun side is, I also heard that you walked up and down Wall Street, if I'm not mistaken, with a cow.
The cow.
So you got to tell everybody about that.
Luckily, I wasn't arrested, right? But we just moved forward without any permits or anything. We opened, it was a yogurt franchise that was opening their first one on Wall Street. And they wanted to do something unique. And we thought, wow, yogurt, Wall Street, we would definitely get attention if we walked a cow. So right away, the owner of the company, he was really gung-ho and saying, well, we're not going to look for, permission. We'll just let them slap our hands and we'll get rid of the cow. And that's obviously what happened when the police showed up, as I was. And I still have pictures to this day. I think I'll date myself, 1980s. I had all these bangs and the hair, and I'm walking the cow down Wall Street, and we got a New York Times placement on it. So talk about a company being able to tout that they're in town. Yeah, it was a New York Times placement on how we walked the cow down Wall Street to welcome in this first yogurt franchise to the neighborhood.
Okay, so I'm going to be calling you because we are in the middle of expanding, if you will, our brand. And right now I am the marketing person as well. So I'll be talking to you, because coming up with ideas like that is probably it's not my forte. I'm good at the strategy of the messaging, but the idea itself, so I'll be calling you this week, probably, Jill. So, well, that was fabulous.
This is the fun part. I always say.
I love fun. So now I'm thinking, man, I did get into the wrong side of the business. But, well, thank you for taking the time to be here and helping us kick off this series, talking about development, engagement of employees, communications when you're building a team. And because I think, as I already stated, we just feel it's really important that we share best practices. So with that said, how big is your team now? What is the largest teams you've worked on? Where did this focus of team being important, where did that start?
Yeah, so a little bit of background on me is that when I graduated from college, I worked as an intern at a fairly large PR firm in Chicago. And I was an intern there because somebody was on maternity leave and they decided not to come back. So, I'm once again dating myself, 80s. It was really hard to find a job in PR, right? Almost impossible. And I was lucky. She said she wasn't coming back. And the president of the company was like, great, you're hired. And I'm like, oh, this could work out better. But back in the day too, when you showed up in an office at 7:30 and you left at 8 o'clock at night, and that's how you proved your value, there was no communication like that. And I always from day one became really involved with the team there. So I, as an intern, knew it was important for me to become friendly with the president of the company, with the vice presidents, let them know who I was, show them my work, ask them for advice. And I think that kind of evolved throughout my whole career. And I grew to be the president of that company. I worked there for a long, long time. I opened offices for them across the country. And then the gentleman that I worked for and I became very friendly with, he passed away and everything changed. And my team that I had built there was no longer being treated as a family. They were no longer being treated as my team. The people now in charge that they brought in were directing people in different ways. And I wasn't comfortable with that. And they maybe weren't so comfortable with me. So I had left and took my core team on with me to develop our own agency, which was very scary. It was a long time into my career. I never thought I would be doing that, but it also goes back to what you're talking about. I value these people that were much younger than me, who were starting their careers, who had worked so hard And I didn't want to see them in a place where they wouldn't be valued as a family or an extension of a team. So we did, we definitely parted ways, and it was on their side and mine. Probably, if I look back now, one of the best things I ever did. And I obviously have lawyers involved because we took a lot of our clients. So worked with all these lawyers and worked out all the details. So everything was fine. And the lawyer said to me, he called them kids, these 5 kids that are going to go along with you, they're not all going to go. You're not going to get them all. Somebody's going to stay back. They're going to be fearful. And guess what? They all went, and they're all here. So one girl didn't move on. She wanted to do something else. She wanted to work in the city. One girl moved on, and now we're at 18 people. And that team core, we just celebrated an anniversary yesterday where we did some fun stuff with the core. I call them my founders that helped me.
Yeah.
They showed up on my doorstep the night I left and said, let's do this. Let's roll up our sleeves and do this. And I say that because that has to be the way you treat people, right? They wanted to go along. They wanted to develop this company. They wanted to develop the team. They wanted to keep us together. And the only reason it worked was because how did we work together at the start before the drama happened? What was that relationship like? They had to feel they were treated fairly. They had to feel they were treated just as me. And one of the things I said to them then, as I say to them now, I've done everything you've done. So I've, gone to a photo shoot at 6 a.m. I've worked a trade show where I tried to get people into the client's booth to talk about what they're doing. I've, stayed up all night to write a document. I've written the proposals. I've pitched every media you could think of, and harder because there wasn't internet. We actually pick up the phone and be like, hey, I got a story idea for you. What do you think? And then they'd slam the phone down, or they'd say, great, this is a great idea. So I always say that I've done every role that you have. So I know what you're doing.
What if I may, it sounds like, and I know this is so important, and this is for, whether you're a team of 18 or you're a team of 1,800 or a team of 18,000, whoever's in your leadership roles. And of course, I come from a place that we're all leaders. We all have to lead ourselves. But if you're in a leadership role where you have people following you, it's really important to lead by example and never to ask anybody to do something you wouldn't be willing to do yourself or haven't done. When I've worked with organizations in the past, I think that's one of the core things is if you put somebody into a position where they are in charge, I have quotes up for those of you who are listening to this on a podcast or on the Soar audio app. If you're putting yourself in, if you're in charge of somebody and you haven't done the role, do not act like you have done the role, or do not act like you have all the answers, because that in itself, I think, is a core principle of leadership, right? And team building is that authenticity and transparency. So the fact that you had credibility because you had done every role and built and done it on bootstraps, it sounds like at some point, right? You did it. It gave you credibility, and you knew how to use that influence appropriately. Like we cash it in, right? As leaders, we have so much leadership, what do I want to say? Leadership bank, if you will. And if I'm going to cash in my influence with somebody, I don't want to misuse that. And I don't want to misalign or misrepresent what I know or do not know. That's what I'm hearing, that you really, it sounds like you just had a good instinct with.
Yeah. And you know what? That's right. It wasn't an instinct. And I think I saw that a lot from people say to me, like, I never thought I would be running a business, right? I worked for somebody. I worked for somebody for a long time. So people say to me, like, how do you know how to treat employees? How do you know what to do? And my father owned a company, grew up, watched him work, right? Watched work ethic, watch him come home at 9 o'clock at night, watch us not take vacations because we had to be there. And I think that just gets instilled in you on what a work ethic is like. And then how do you appreciate the people who work for you and how important those people are? Because I never worked for a big corporation, right? So I grew up in a family of a small business. Then I worked in another medium-sized business. It was never a big corporate anything. But I watched the key people there treated their employees, including my father, including then the man that I worked for. And I thought, you know, how do I want to treat people? What are the ways that I like to, you know, what people say to me? And I will always give praise too. You know, and I get excited when they get a story from one of our clients. I'm like, this is terrific. How amazing is this? You know, let's go buy the magazine. And all these young kids are like, why do we buy the magazine? And I have the link. I'm like, oh, we have to go get the physical copy of the magazine. And I think they see that, you know, that I'm still so happy for what they're doing. And, you know, it is a fun field that we're in. Believe me, we represent a lot of fun people, celebrities, athletes. But at the same time, it's a hard field, right? So there's a lot of pressure, a lot of stress. We're banking on the media, right? We're banking on people.
And it is, and I think that based on like what I know, it would be very tough. I mean, because you have numbers, but numbers in press and the PR, you know, I mean, I worked at cars.com for 8 years, so we would go against the traditional advertising. So I understand the numbers, but you're right. There's got to be a pressure there to perform. And what is that pressure and the perception? You know, I think as you were talking, a couple of things came to mind as well. What do you think? So I mean, you have your people have stayed with you. So when you think about those 3 areas that we're focusing on, development, engagement, communications, which of those 3 do you feel like you have done the best with over the years?
Yeah. So I think communications / development.
Okay.
So always being hands-on, always being available. You know, I don't, you know, not to say we don't take vacation, because people take vacations in all different ways before 2020. But I never disappeared on any of my staff, right? I was always available. If we went somewhere, it was a long weekend and they knew how to get me if something happened. So to keep communication open that way, that they know that I'm always available to them no matter what, but then to watch them develop. So I only promote from within. So as our company grows, I promote the people who have been with me, or we hire interns too, which has been very exciting. And being in Chicago, we've had some top-notch schools like, you know, Northwestern, Loyola, give us interns. And then it's wonderful because they like the environment. And that's a different thing now for millennials, if you want to call them millennials, or young people. They have to like the environment that they're in, right? They have to enjoy the structure. And that's more important to them even than compensation. Like they really have to enjoy it. So you have to know how to develop their skills and then promote from within. So they may start as an intern, and the next thing you know, years down the road, and I never, you know, would say you're an intern today and tomorrow you're the account executive. No, that's not how we gotta, these people, our clients pay us money. We have to provide for them, but it's a learning process for them. And then, you know, let 2 years go by and they're very comfortable and they move into an account executive role. So I really think it's important to train people the way that we do our business, what makes us successful and how we do it. And then promoting and not bringing somebody in. And I do understand companies sometimes have to do that, but not just bringing somebody in to take a role above somebody else who's been working, you know, so hard for me for years. And then now they have a boss that's not really fair, somebody that they don't know.
Right. So I love that. So you promote within, when you identify ways to develop people, because I imagine in your realm, they're very creative, I imagine, independent, I would imagine. I don't like to put labels on people, but when we're talking about roles, how do you determine the best way to, what you feel is the best way to develop each person? Have you put together programs for each person, or what is your process for starting that development so that it is a forefront of your culture?
Right. That's a key question, and I'm going to plug in to give us some power so we don't lose each other before that key question.
Right.
Okay, we have power. We do a variety of things, and one of the things, I think we have a mutual friend, Kathy Murphy, who has worked with us. And I wanted to make sure I got this straight, what it's called, but it's Team Strengths Reveal. And I wasn't sure about it.
I think Kathy's on here. So let's just give her a shout out. Kathy Murphy, she is a coach. She is on Soar.com. So if anybody who's listening to this is looking for a coach or a trainer, that's what we do, right? We have 2,000 of the best coaches and trainers on Soar.com. So let's give Kathleen a big shout out. And so she is, one of her tools, I think, is a strengths finder, right, through Gallup. There's so many tools out there. There's DISC, and we're not promoting one over the other. This just happens to be the one she is using and that you're talking about, correct?
Right.
Okay, awesome. So it's called Strengths Reveal is what she calls it?
Team Strengths Reveal, TSR.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we knew each other from another company, and so she was helping me out. You know, she would give me advice every so often as a business coach, things to do if I had a question. She was just a great person for me to pivot. You know, she's also an author, speaker. So she said, why don't you let me come in and do this exercise for your team? And I kind of thought, I don't know, you know, are they going to be like weird about this? And what is it going to show? Then you get a little scared about what's it going to show about me? What's it going to say?
Yes.
So I said, okay, Kathy, come on in. She showed me what it did for others. It was amazing. You know, I think we worked with her on it maybe for half a day, and then she came back in the following morning and talked about some stuff. And what it revealed was so right on. And not only was that, like, I'm not saying she was
right.
Predicting the future here or anything, but by talking to people and having them filling out these, you know, different surveys she had, I was shocked. So, for example, there's a gentleman who works with us who's he looks for direction, he looks for team building, he looks to work with people, but he's going to get it done. He's going to get it done. He is going to get it done. And I don't care. And that's good, right? Because that's a great trait to have. If I give him a task, he's going to get it done.
Yes.
And so he talked to her, and it came out that he was, and the list, I think it was called a commander.
Oh, command. Yes, command.
Command. I called him the commander. Probably.
That's all right. No, that's all right. I'm very
when he watches this, he's going to be like, thanks.
No. It's called command. The strength is called command.
Strength is called command. But I was found that I was a wooer. So I like to talk to people. Good, right? It's so exciting. You know, this is wonderful. And it's good for the occupation I'm in. But his was good too. But how does that command work with the wooer? So interesting. And to this day, that was a few years ago now. Yeah. I look back when I'm working with him and think, this is the way he thinks. This is what brings him to the team. This is why we work so well together, because you need people like this. Yes. He wasn't doing it to be rude, or he wasn't doing it to be insensitive. He was doing it because that's how he does his job. That's how he works. That's how the mind works. And when you start to realize that, then who works well with who, right? So the real sensitive person on the team isn't going to probably work really well with the commander, because that might not blend. But the commander could work with me because I'm the one who's trying to woo and be like, okay, I get it, blah, blah, blah. Like, let's just go on. But it just, and I know it's called, I don't like to define something with a word, but it's a reveal, right? And it really did. It was
absolutely
wonderful. It was wonderful.
Well, and I'm glad that you brought this up, because what I have done, and I'm very familiar with strengths, and yes, that's what it's intended to do, is it's not about changing who we are. It's not even about becoming best friends. It's about somebody who doesn't have command and somebody who has, and it could be any of them, it doesn't matter. They can end up working together. The key is self-awareness. You helped your team raise their self-awareness around who they are, what they do, how they act, and therefore your culture now is able to appreciate each other for who they are and what they do. I think a lot of companies, just like you said, I was thinking, oh, I don't know, what are they going to think? And even the employees are thinking, oh, what are they going to find out about me? I don't want them to know, I'm scared, right? They come from a place of fear, which is natural. And that's one of the reasons why we're this is I truly, truly, truly want to shift the paradigm and the perception around coaching and training. First of all, coaching should go to the top people, not to the people you're pushing out the door. And training, every organization I've ever approached, and I'll say 98% of them, if I ask them what are the most important things besides results, CEOs always say I have to have results, and rightly so. It's people. Our people are the most important thing. And then you ask them how much they spend on development, 0. Or it's the first thing out of the budget. And what they're not making the connection with is, if you would invest a little bit in that development, like what you're talking about, that connection, that raising their self-awareness versus just keep trying to give them an annual feedback or the feedback at 6 months. And here's the 2 things you do awesome, but here are the 42 things that you need to work on. But boy, this was good. Can't wait to talk to you again in 6 months. And you think that that's how you develop people, you might as well get rid of that too, and get rid of that whole HR process. Because if you're not truly leaning into who those people are, and I'm on a soapbox, I know I am. But I thank you for saying that, because that's one of their purposes with this whole series, is we want the top organizations who develop it, they know. And if you don't have it internally, you partner with somebody like what you did with Kathleen. They partner with an outside party. So I guess now my question for you is you said that was a few years ago. What have you learned from that particular training and the development that you've done since? What's been your biggest takeaways as far as developing your team?
Yeah, so that really probably was the best. And what's interesting about it is it's every day, because I interact with all of my employees. So I know what their strengths are, right? I know their personality. It's really helped every single day. And I have to tell Kathy, I mean, it comes to mind all the time. And sometimes my husband, who works with me, will say, their trait was blah, blah, blah. And I think, yeah, that's right. And that's why they did it this way. And it's an understanding. And you're right.
Yes.
Here's about a 6 months review and you should do blah, blah, blah. And then you come see them in 6 months. What did it do? And one of the other things about this was they found out, I think, a lot about themselves.
Yes.
You think you're a certain way, but then all of a sudden you're like, yeah, that is me. That is the type of personality I have. And that's how I tick. So I think that's, it's just so important, and it really is. It's every day we learn about that. And I'll give you an example that I think is just kind of touching right now. During the pandemic, when it first happened, right, everybody just stayed in their homes, and in Chicago, we didn't go out, and we had to figure out how to take a team of people who work so closely together and are constantly, brainstorming together and eating lunch together and sharing together. Now they're all on their own at home, right? So thank God for Zoom, and we figured that out, but they're still at home and they're young. And we started to have like weekly Zoom meetings where we just talk about like life in general, what's going on, what are people doing? And we learned about, what was happening with them. But a touching thing that happened from one of the traits that we learned about was the young man who was sensitive, and the young man who had the command trait. When we started going back in the office, and we could have I think we could have 4 people in our office at a time based on the rules here in Chicago. The sensitive one was in the office, and then the other guy came in with the other trait of being command. And the employee that was sensitive came out and looked at this other guy who he's worked with now for like 5 years. He started crying. And they told me about it later in the day, what had happened. And he said, I just missed him. I missed the interaction. I missed the talking. I missed that we could actually see each other. And we hadn't seen each other for so many months that his reaction was so sensitive, right? To be like crying.
Yeah, considered emotional or something,
right? But the other gentleman knew from the exercise that we did that he was a very sensitive person, and he just called me up and he said, wow, how touching that he started crying when he saw me, because we hadn't seen each other in so long. And our group really is based, like I say, whether it's right or wrong, we're like a family. And I always say family first. If something's happening in your life, we'll figure it out. Don't put work first, family first, your life first. If something's happening, talk to me. We can work it out. Businesses will always be there. And I've stressed that from day one. And I think they really appreciate it. And they do treat each other.
You're talking about values now, right? So now you're talking about, and I think sometimes, and I know we'll have team leaders listening to this as well, they might think we're part of a big company, but you can create this as a team. I did it inside of a corporation, and we had a great culture anyway. I created my own culture with my team, right? So, and what you're talking about is values. You've got to understand your own values, what you value, and then you live those values out. So I think in the old days, we'll say the old days, which could be, yesterday for right now, but in the old days, right? It's, work, and I keep my work and my business life separate. That is so old school. You are who you are all day long. And if you aren't being you, the same you at work as you are at home, one of them will fall apart. And I think that's why we saw a lot of those people in the 80s and the 90s, divorce rates and all of those things, because you would go to work and be one way and come home and be another. You can't do that. It isn't congruent with how we are made as human beings. So what I'm hearing you say is your values of who you are really come out when you live those values when you're leading your team. And that's a great tip for anybody who's listening to this. And I think even younger people, I believe we have one of the most educated millennials, that group of people, young people, most educated group of people ever to come across. I mean, I am so impressed with them. I have a board of directors every year, a list of people that I think of, in every area of my life. And one of them, she's in her 20s and she has a doctorate. And she's so well spoken. She's poised. She's been on my board now for like 4 years. I write down every year. Here's what I a couple of weeks ago. What they have in knowledge and education, they lack in wisdom. And I think this is where people like you, Kathy, or you, Jill, is, and any team leader, and that we're hoping, we want to highlight anybody that has this, is that's where we can come in. Acknowledge their knowledge, acknowledge their education, acknowledge what they bring to the table. And yes, culture is more important to them than when we grew up, because it came from top down. That's not what it was. It's our job to meet them and bring them along, because what was important to us 20 years ago is not what they're going to be teaching to, the next generation. So we've got to be willing to be changed as well. So what I'm hearing is know your own values, and then meet them where they're at and bring them along as well. And I think instead of forcing it on them, but live it, and they'll live their values as well. You're, again, leading by example. That's just really what I'm hearing you talking about is values a lot.
100%, 100%. And now, and once again, as many of us still work out of our homes and we figured out a way to do it, right? I said to you, I have a dog. I'm in the house now. I couldn't get to the office because we've got 16 inches of snow, but the dog might bark, and that's me. So I'll do my best to control it, right? And you just heard it, and I tried to fix it, but I understand that everyone's got something, right? So I have one of the employees has 2 children. Like, things will happen. Things will happen on calls now. It's different. We have to adapt to it too, and that it's okay. It is okay. This is what we've learned through this. We are human beings too. We're people. We have lives, and we have businesses, and we can do really well in both.
I love it. I love it. Well, time flies. So before we keep talking here, I do want to acknowledge we have somebody from Boston on here. We've had a couple people hop on. I know they have to hop off at the end of at the half hour. But does anybody have any questions for Jill? Just go ahead and go ahead and chat those in. Ask them. So what do you hope for teams in the future, and team leaders in the future, managers and CEOs? What do you hope for them? Or what do you wish they could all truly understand when it comes to leadership and development and engagement? What do you just wish they could all just get? If they could get something, what would that be?
I think a little compassion, really. We're all set in our ways. We all know what the end result is for our clients. I'm in a service business, but you still have to be compassionate for what is going on. And especially right now, our lives are so different than they were, right? I used to fly out to New York twice a week. Things have changed. We're different people. We're getting used to a different norm. And if you can just be a little bit compassionate for the people you work with and understand that everybody's going through something, you know, there might be, the business is going on, but there's other things going on in their lives, and, you know, give people a break once in a while. And I wish that other people would kind of just look inside each individual and realize that these are people and they work for you, yes, but they have a life and they have a family, and they have to realize how both of those things need to blend together to make everybody successful. And I think people would be happier that way.
Absolutely. Well, I don't even know, you know, I don't want to even add to that. So here's a question. What advice can you give to leaders about how to increase engagement beyond Zoom, since we don't know when we'll be able to work together again? Any tips on that? Like beyond Zoom, how do you engage your... Great question.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think about it all the time, and it almost scares me too, because I feel we rely now so much on Zoom, especially in the PR field. All of our interviews for our clients, we create national news. They're all doing it via Zoom. They're not flying out and going into studios, you know, so it's a different life. So what else can you do? So I always think to do some fun things, especially if it's internal. So, yes, you know, like I said, sending over, like there's, for different holidays or events or special times in people's lives, we'll send over and have, now you can have everything delivered. So we'll send over a bottle of champagne or a bottle of liquor or a pizza to the family, the girl who has 2 kids, right? Like, surprise, here's your dinner. So I think internally engaging beyond Zoom is doing some fun things like that. But I think though that the challenge is, how do you engage one-on-one with new business relationships beyond Zoom? And I'm not sure about that. I think that's going to be the challenge on how do we develop that relationship before, when you and I would meet, would go to lunch and talk about that we were going to do this and what would happen, and then we'd do it next week or whatever. Things have changed like that. And I don't know when we'll feel that personal touch again, that we could do something beyond.
You know, it's so funny you say that, because this morning I was just talking with somebody, because with our audio, we have an app where we're developing a learning and development app. It's going to be the Netflix of learning and development. And it is so awesome. And we're working with associations and universities. And this gentleman, oh, he was fabulous. And right, in the normal world, even though we probably would have done as, it just would have been different for the next steps. I think it would have been like, well, maybe we'll get together, we'll fly down and, you know, see how this will work, but that's not it, which is great, because now we can, you know, still Zoom. But I was thinking, I really just want to write him a handwritten note. But by the time he gets it, we will have already met another time. So, and yet I'm not sure about investing a bunch of money and, you know, like sending something. Like I said, it's a quandary of how do you develop these relationships? And that's something that, I mean, again, hopefully this series, we can come up with some of those solutions, if you will. Here's another question. We have a time for one more. How do you foster more dynamic conversations and communications, like especially with team members who might not know one another as well?
Great point. We hired 4 people during the pandemic. I'd never met them. How do I get to know them? So we've done some fun things. And it kind of reminds me, I teach a religious ed class for Catholic CCD for 4th graders. And so how do I get to know them, right, in the class? And I'm doing it via Zoom now too, which is a whole other story. But how do I get to know that child? How do I get to understand them, right? So I've been using that in my development of new employees. Tell me about yourself. Do you have any pets? Can I see your cat? Put it on the screen. I mean, what did you do when, you know, you were in 2nd grade? I mean, anything I can pull out of them, information. But I noticed they love talking about their pets. So these young people, I'll be like, let me show you my cat. And so they'll have the cat on the screen. And it's just a way to know like what's important to them. And, I get a little bit of their lifestyle. So we'll have these one-on-one breaks where, I'll just say, let's talk one-on-one. I mean, can you imagine? I've never even seen them yet. We've hired them to work on our team. And we do a lot of conference calls via Zoom, being in the service business we're in. So we get a feel for, kind of the way that they present themselves on the calls. But I do like to have these kind of one-on-ones where I just say, just tell me about you. Like, what's different about you? What's special? What do you like? And that's worked.
Yeah. So it's what you're saying is you have to take the time to do it. I think a lot of companies, organizations right now are moving so fast because they're feeling the pressure to come out of this, if you will, of what happened last year. And things are moving fast and a lot of opportunities have happened. I mean, it amazes me, the new things that have happened, which is fabulous, even including our learning and development app. But what's interesting though, is if you don't take the time, I think right now, one of the biggest swings I think we'll see is, as much as technology is awesome, and that's why we're asking the question, how can we use technology to uplift humanity and create those connections, is people will tend to just talk about the product, the sales. It's going to go more that way. That's my fear. And bottom line is, it always comes down to people. Always. If an author is sitting out on top of a mountain, does not understand his audience, which is people, it's not going to work. Right. It always comes back to people. And if you're not intentional and take time to know your people, Zoom or not, it won't work long term. It's all about people, because otherwise they're going to be there to do their job, but they are looking for their next job then. And it's easier for employees right now to look for other jobs silently. So if you're not involved with them, I'm not talking about micromanaging them, I'm talking about a relationship. And I think there's so many people who, probably my age, that are in that fine line of building a relationship, do your job, build a relationship, do your job. We're pushing those boundaries of vulnerability, I think, with a lot of people. So I think that is an important thing. And that's what I'm hearing you say, is take the time to know your people. And if you don't,
we have the time. What else are we doing? That's what I said to somebody earlier. What else are you doing? Especially here in the Midwest, you can't even get out of your house if you want it.
Yeah, we were already trapped, and now we can't leave again.
Trapped. But we have the time. How lucky. Look at it as positive.
At the end of time, it goes so fast. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Those of you who joined, thank you, Jill, for helping us kick this series off, because I think everything you had to say, values, intentionality, it's about people. Have fun. Lead by example. I mean, we could sit and unpack everything we just touched the surface on, probably for hours more. And so that's what my hope is that people who are listening to this, as you listen to the series, or if it's 10 years from now and it's 20, what it would be 31, and you're listening to this, that I think some of those core things will never change. It's all about people. And you can have, it is a family at work or a community at work. And Jill, you've led by example. I think you're the perfect person to have put on this be the first person on this inaugural series. So thank you for taking the time to share with us and the SOAR audience. We do appreciate it.
And I'm grateful to be on it. Thank you.
Absolutely. And what's the name of your firm? If anybody wants to look you up, we should probably get that out there.
What kind of PR person am I? It's Jill Schmidt, SCHMIDT PR. So JillSchmidtPR.com. JillSchmidtPR.com. Correct.
In Chicago, look her up on LinkedIn, inquire. It sounds like if she's willing to walk a cow down New York City, imagine what she could do for you. So And thank you, Kathleen Murphy, for recommending Jill and introducing us. And please go to soar.com. If you're looking for, you want 2021 to be the best year ever, find a coach, find a trainer on soar.com to help you get outside your own box and help you partner with you and your teams so you can get going again and make it your best year. So thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Webinar series. Bye, everyone.